The first time I lost my voice, it happened in a room built for speaking. Not the dramatic kind of silence, not a throat closing on stage under a spotlight, not a microphone dying at the worst possible second. Mine was quieter and more humiliating. I was sitting in the third row of the regional debate final, hands folded over my skirt, watching Sabrina Hale deliver my argument with the calm precision of a girl who had never once had to build anything from scratch. The motion was printed on the projector behind her. This house would ban legacy admissions in selective schools. In my first life, the motion had been released 1 hour before the final, which meant no coach, parent, or adult consultant was allowed to write speeches. That was the rule. Debaters could brainstorm with teammates, use approved research packets, and prepare their own cases under supervision. Sabrina, captain of St. Aurelia's debate team, walked in anyway with a full secret script written by her private coach, Mr. Calder, complete with jokes, statistics, rebuttal traps, and even emotional pauses marked in brackets. I knew because I found it 10 minutes before the final, warm from the library printer, with her name at the top and Sabrina. Memorize the underlined turns, do not improvise, written in the margin. In my first life, I did the good thing. I ran after her. I gave it back. I whispered, "You dropped this. You can't use it." She stared at me like I had handed her a weapon she forgot to hide. Then she smiled, thanked me, tore off the top page, and by the time the adjudicators asked why my opening case sounded strikingly similar to Sabrina's printed notes, she had already told them I stole her coach's prep, tried to blackmail her, and copied lines after returning the script too late for her to change. I was disqualified. She won Best Speaker. My own debate coach told me talent without integrity meant nothing. By graduation, Script Thief followed my name into every scholarship interview where I tried to sound calm. Years later, when a panic attack took my breath in a courtroom internship interview after someone asked why I had left competitive speaking, the last thing I remembered was Sabrina's voice saying my own line, "Privilege is not tradition just because it learned to wear a blazer," and the audience laughing for her. Then I woke up to the smell of printer toner, rain on library windows, and warm paper sliding out of the same printer tray, with Sabrina Hale's secret script waiting under my hand again. For 1 full minute, I did not touch it. That was the part nobody imagines about being reborn. You do not come back graceful, wise, and instantly dangerous. You come back with your heart trying to climb out of your ribs, your palms damp, and your teenage body wearing shoes that pinch because you had forgotten how badly you used to accept discomfort. The library printer hummed, spat out the last page, and went still. Outside the glass walls, the debate tournament moved around me in navy blazers and lanyards, students pacing with cue cards, parents pretending not to hover, coaches whispering last-minute advice they were not technically allowed to give. The clock over the circulation desk read 2:14 p.m. The final began at 2:30. In my first life, this was the exact minute I had scooped up the script, seen Sabrina's name, and sprinted down the East Corridor because I thought fairness was a shared religion and I had found someone's lost prayer book. This time, I kept my hands flat on the table and read the first page without moving it. Opening government speaker, Sabrina Hale. Framing. Legacy admissions are not neutral nostalgia. They are inherited access disguised as school spirit. My stomach turned. It was not only similar to my argument. It was my argument's skeleton with better tailoring. In the old life, I had wondered how Sabrina predicted my case. Now I saw the answer in red comments. Iris will likely argue moral illegitimacy, preempt by defining merit as public trust. Iris. My name. Her coach had written lines for her against me before the motion had even been released. That meant either he had guessed the topic with impossible precision or someone had leaked the shortlist. A second page slid from beneath the first, and a sticky note clung to it. If Iris challenges prep ethics, laugh once. Say, desperation is not a point of information. Judges dislike drama. I felt something cold and bright settle behind my eyes. In my first life, I had thought I was unlucky. This was not luck. This was architecture. I lifted my phone, recorded the printer tray, the timestamp, the whole script still untouched, the library windows, the tournament schedule pinned nearby, and the sign above the prep room door that said finalists. No outside materials after motion release. Then I picked up the pages by the corner, slid them into a clear plastic folder from my bag, and did not run after Sabrina Hale. I had only rejoined debate club 3 weeks earlier, which was why everyone still looked at me like I had walked back into a house I once burned down, even though in this life the fire had not happened yet. The rebirth had returned me to the morning of regionals, but it had also returned me to the girl I had been before the scandal. Alternate speaker, scholarship student, dangerous enough to make captains nervous, quiet enough for adults to call promising instead of powerful. I had quit debate in the old timeline after Sabrina destroyed me. In this second one, I rejoined on the Monday before selections, walked into the classroom while Coach Fallon was arguing about speaking order, and said, "I'm available for third speaker if you need me." Everyone had stared. Our captain, Tessa, almost dropped her marker. Coach Fallon asked whether I was sure, because she remembered I had lost confidence after last semester's practice collapse. That collapse had been Sabrina's first little test. A fake anonymous note slipped into my prep folder saying my mother had called the office, making me miss my speech slot and look unreliable. In my first life, I blamed myself for being distractible. This time, I ignored the note and spoke anyway. Rejoining changed the board before Sabrina realized the pieces moved. She had expected to face a weaker speaker in the final. Instead, she got me. That was why the script now had my name written into its traps. I tucked the plastic folder under my blazer, opened my own prep notebook, and looked at the case I had built legally in the supervised room 40 minutes earlier. It was rough, handwritten mine. No perfect statistics.
No polished joke.
But it had a core I trusted. Selective schools claim to reward merit, but legacy preference lets old privilege buy a new uniform. Sabrina's coach had written a prettier version of that sentence.
Fine.
Let her carry pretty stolen things. I had learned something from dying with my own words in someone else's mouth. A line only belongs to you if you can survive without it. I crossed out the sentence she had stolen, rewrote my opening around something uglier and stronger, and went looking for evidence, not permission. The tournament rules table was near the auditorium doors, staffed by Mrs. Banerjee, the regional convener, a woman with silver hair, reading glasses, and the calm of someone who had disqualified students with rich parents before breakfast. In my first life, I had avoided her until after Sabrina accused me because I thought official adults were like judges in stories. They appeared when truth became dramatic. They do not. Adults appear when summoned early enough and given paperwork they can hold. I approached with the plastic folder still closed. "Mrs. Banerjee," I said, "I found printed material in the library printer that appears to be an outside written script for the final motion. I have not returned it to the student named on it. I recorded where I found it before touching it. I need guidance without compromising my own team's eligibility." Her eyes lifted slowly. Good sentence. Not panicked. Not accusing. Not begging. "Who is named on it?" she asked.
Sabrina Hale.
A small change crossed her face. Not surprise exactly. Recognition of a problem with a surname. "And you are?" "Iris Reyes, third speaker for Eastmere." She held out her hand. "Show me the first page only." I slid it out. She read the heading, the red coach comments, the timestamp printed at the bottom. "Where is your coach?" "In the supervised prep room with our first and second speakers." "Did you read the whole document?" "Enough to know it contains arguments against me by name." Her mouth tightened at that. "Do not discuss its contents with your team. Do not alter your speech using it." I already changed one line before coming here, because it matched my own case. She looked at me sharply. "Was your line prepared before finding this?" I opened my notebook to the crossed-out sentence, dated, with the prep supervisor's initials at the top. Yes. This was what the first life version of me had never understood. Innocence without timestamps is still vulnerable to performance. Mrs. Banerjee called over a rules officer, sealed the plastic folder in an evidence envelope, wrote my name as finder, and signed across the flap. Then she said something that made my pulse stumble. "We will not interrupt the final before the first speech unless there is a safety issue. We need to observe whether the material is used." In plain language, let Sabrina step onto the stage with the script. Let her choose the trap in front of witnesses. I nodded. It was terrible. It was perfect. Sabrina found me outside the auditorium at 2:26, for minutes before the final, looking less like a thief and more like a campaign poster for academic excellence. Her hair was pinned in a smooth low bun, her navy blazer had gold piping, and her speaker card was blank on top, which was a nice touch. Her coach, Mr. Calder, stood near the water station pretending to text while watching every movement around her. He was not a school coach officially because tournament rules banned private coaches from prep corridors after motion release, but he had the soft leather folder, expensive watch, and patient predatory smile of a man paid to make other people's children sound brilliant. In my first life, I thought he was just a proud parent until I saw his comments on the script. This time, I met his eyes for half a second and watched him assess whether I knew enough to be dangerous. Sabrina stepped in front of me. "Iris," she said warmly, "I heard you rejoin debate. Brave." There were 3 meanings in the word. Brave to return. Brave to challenge her. Brave, because courage and stupidity look similar to girls holding loaded scripts. "I heard you still need help writing," I said. Too early, maybe. But I wanted to see her face. It did not disappoint. Her smile paused, then resumed half an inch lower.
What?
Nothing. I adjusted my cuff. Good luck. Her gaze flicked to my hands, my bag, the corridor behind me. She was looking for the script. She expected me to give it back, maybe with a warning, maybe with fear. She expected the first life Iris. When she saw nothing, her eyes moved toward the library, then to Mr. Calder. He slipped his phone into his pocket and walked away too quickly. Pattern interrupt. The script had gone missing from their plan, and I was not offering myself as delivery service. The marshal called teams into the auditorium. Sabrina leaned closer as we entered. "If you found something of mine," she murmured, returning it before the round would be the mature thing to do. There it was, morality dragged out like a leash. I looked at the empty stage, the judges setting pens in front of them. Mrs. Banerjee now seated at the side table with the sealed envelope beside her water bottle. "If it's yours," I whispered back, "you should be nervous." For the first time in either life, Sabrina Hale walked into a final without knowing which version of the story she was in. The first speaker for my team, Tessa, opened cleanly. Not spectacularly, but cleanly. She framed the debate around institutional trust, argued that schools cannot claim fairness while giving hereditary advantage, and landed a decent line about admission committees confusing nostalgia with evidence. I sat beside her, taking notes, feeling the sealed script at the side table like a second heartbeat in the room. Sabrina's team was opposition, which meant her first speaker, a boy named Julian, had to defend legacy admissions or at least defend them from a total ban. He was nervous. In the first life, he had stumbled, and Sabrina repaired everything with her illegal speech. This time, he stumbled again, glancing back at Sabrina after every sentence. Then Sabrina stood for second opposition. Applause. Of course. She moved to the podium like it had been built around her posture. She placed 3 blank cue cards down. Blank, I noticed, because memorization makes arrogance look clean. "Madam Chair, adjudicators, and honored guests," she began. "Government would have you believe that privilege is a ghost haunting selective schools. But ghosts do not write recommendation letters, mentor younger students, fund bursaries, or sustain traditions. Not from the script's first page." She had adjusted. Smart. For 2 minutes, she spoke from a backup structure, less polished than usual but still sharp. I almost wondered if losing the script had scared her honest. Then she reached the rebuttal section, and fear, like habit, sent her home. Our opponents will likely claim that merit is public trust. But desperation is not a point of information. My pen stopped. Mrs. Banerjee's had lifted. Sabrina smiled at me across the chamber, unable to resist the line her coach had written. There it was. The sticky note. The line about judges disliking drama. She continued, smoother now, confidence returning as the memorized script took over. The real question is not whether some applicants inherit advantage. All students inherit something: language, confidence, sacrifice, community. To ban one inheritance while romanticizing another is not justice. It is envy with a policy paper. That sentence had been on page 4. I knew because I had read it before sealing it. Mrs. Banerjee wrote something down. One adjudicator looked toward the convener table. Sabrina had chosen. I did not smile. That was important. In my first life, people had used my facial expressions as evidence. Defensive, resentful, jealous, unstable. This time, I wrote down every stolen line as if it bored me. Her speech was good. That hurt in a way I did not expect. Not because she deserved it, but because the performance worked. The audience leaned in. The judges followed. Even after everything, even knowing the secret, I felt the old danger of beauty delivered confidently. That is why cheating survives. Not because it hides perfectly, but because it sounds better than the messy truth. Sabrina finished with a graceful turn. Government asks us to burn down a bridge because some crossed it first. Opposition asks you to widen the bridge and stop pretending ashes are access. Applause filled the auditorium. In the old life, that line won Best Speaker. In this one, I circled it in my notes and wrote page 6 beside it. My second speaker, Noor, looked shaken. She prepped us, she whispered. I did not tell her about the script. I could not. Stay in the round, I whispered back. Attack the bridge. Noor nodded, went up, and did better than she knew. She argued that a bridge controlled by families with keys is not public infrastructure. It is a private driveway. The audience laughed. Sabrina's smile thinned.
Good.
Then it was my turn as third speaker, the role that had ruined me once because third speakers are expected to clash, rebuild, and close without sounding desperate. I stood, buttoned my blazer, and took only my legal notebook to the podium. The sealed script sat 10 feet to my right. My past sat somewhere behind my ribs, screaming not to mess this up. I looked at the judges, not Sabrina, and began. This debate is not about whether families matter. It is about whether institutions should pretend family advantage is neutral when it benefits the families already closest to the institution. My voice shook on the first sentence. I let it. Then I continued. Opposition says everyone inherits something. True. But only some inherit an admissions officer who calls it tradition. The round changed when I stopped trying to outpolish Sabrina and started cutting the supports beneath her. I did not accuse her. Not yet. I attacked the logic her coach had built. If legacy families mentor younger students, why should that mentorship be conditional on admissions preference? If alumni fund bursaries, why must schools pay them back with seats instead of gratitude? If tradition requires unfairness to survive, why is it worth preserving? I turned her bridge metaphor back on itself. A bridge is not widened by letting the toll collector's children through first. The audience reacted, and for the first time, Sabrina looked down at her blank cards. She had memorized a speech, not a debate. There is a difference. A script prepares you for expected doors. Clash opens windows. I saw the moment she realized I had changed enough of my case that her pre-written traps no longer fit cleanly. She raised for a point of information. Is the speaker suggesting all family connection is corrupt? In my first life, I had snapped. That's not what I said, sounding irritated, letting her frame me as emotional. This time, I smiled slightly. No, I am suggesting admissions offices can tell the difference between loving your school and owning its future. The adjudicators wrote. Sabrina sat. I closed by making the debate smaller because smaller truths are harder to dodge. Somewhere outside every selective school, there is a student who did not inherit a crest, a donor table, or a coach writing sentences for them in advance. If the institution says merit matters, it has to meet that student at the gate without asking who their grandparents were. I heard the sentence as I said it. A coach writing sentences for them in advance. Too close? Maybe. Mrs. Banerjee's pen stopped. Sabrina's head snapped up. The audience did not understand. The people who needed to understand did. I sat down to applause that felt less like victory and more like a match struck in a room full of gas. After the round, the teams were told to wait in separate classrooms while adjudication took place. That was not normal. Usually we all milled around the foyer, pretending not to care while refreshing our phones and eating stale biscuits. Separate rooms meant process. Process meant Sabrina had a problem. Our team was placed in room 3B with Coach Valen, who looked at us one by one and said, "Nobody talk about the debate outside this room until results." Tessa groaned. "That sounds ominous." Nor whispered, "Did we break a rule?" Coach's eyes flicked to me. She knew something, not the details. Mrs. Banerjee had likely told her enough to keep me clean. "Just wait," Coach said. "Waiting is harder than speaking. Speaking gives fear a job. Waiting lets it wander." My phone buzzed 20 minutes later from an unknown number. "You had no right to keep it." I stared at the message, then screenshotted it. A second came through. "Return the script and say you found it after the round. You're ruining everyone." Not Sabrina's tone. "Mr. Calder's, maybe." I saved it, forwarded it silently to Mrs. Banerjee's tournament email with a subject line, "Possible intimidation message received during adjudication," and placed my phone face down. In the first life, messages like that would have sent me running into a hallway to fix, explain, negotiate, apologize for making consequences inconvenient. This time, I stayed seated. Tessa watched me. "Iris," she said carefully, "what happened?" I looked at Coach Valen. She gave a small nod. "I found outside material from Sabrina's side before the round," I said. Noor's mouth fell open. Tessa sat back hard. "And you didn't tell us?" I couldn't. It could have contaminated our prep. "But she used it?" "Yes." The room went very quiet. Coach Valen looked away toward the rainy windows. "You did exactly what you were supposed to do." The sentence hit me harder than applause. In my first life, she had said, "I don't know what to believe, Iris." This time, she said I did exactly what I was supposed to do before the accusation arrived. Some wounds heal backward when the right sentence finally enters the room. Sabrina was not in the room when we were called back to the auditorium. That was the first public sign. Her team entered without her, faces stiff. Mr. Calder stood near the exit speaking rapidly into his phone until Mrs. Banerjee approached, said something low, and he stopped talking as if the air had been cut. The audience had thinned, but not enough. Parents smelled scandal the way sharks smell blood. Nobody left when a final result took 45 minutes longer than scheduled. Mrs. Banerjee stepped to the podium instead of the chief adjudicator. Before announcing results, she said, "The tournament committee must address a procedural matter." The words procedural matter have a special power in school competitions. They sound boring until everyone realizes boring words can destroy trophies. During the final, concerns were raised regarding prohibited outside assistance after motion release. The committee has reviewed printed material found prior to the round, time-stamped video of its discovery, document contents, and the speeches delivered. A murmur moved through the hall. Sabrina's mother stood from the front row. "Where's my daughter?" Mrs. Banerjee did not look at her. St. Aurelia's second opposition speaker has been withdrawn from the round record, pending further disciplinary review. The opposition team's score will be adjusted in accordance with tournament rules. Sabrina's mother said, louder, "This is outrageous." Mr. Calder moved toward her, whispering, but she shook him off.
Good.
"Let the adults perform now." Mrs. Banerjee continued, "We will not name the reporting student. We will note that the student followed procedure and did not share prohibited material with their team." My heart knocked once. She would not name me. I was grateful. I was also aware the room already knew. Sabrina's eyes appeared in the side doorway then, red but dry, fixed on me with such hatred that the old Iris inside me almost ducked. I did not. The chief adjudicator announced Ismir as winner. There was applause but uneven, stunned. Tessa grabbed my hand under the row of chairs. Noor started crying. Coach Valen exhaled like she had been holding her breath since I rejoined the club. I looked at the trophy and felt almost nothing. Not because I did not want it, because the Real win was not a silver cup. It was hearing the words "followed procedure" in a room where I had once been called a thief. The confrontation came in the corridor afterward because Sabrina Hale was too disciplined to collapse in public and too proud not to bleed somewhere. I had gone to the bathroom to breathe, splashed cold water on my wrists, and was walking back past the trophy display when she stepped out from behind a pillar. No blazer now, just her white shirt, sleeves rolled, face bare of tears. You stole my script, she said. I almost laughed. Your coach wrote it. Her mouth tightened. You had no right to read it. You had no right to use it. You think that makes you honest? She stepped closer. You built half your case around knowing what I would say.
No.
I built my case around knowing what I believe. That's why I could change it. The line struck something. Her eyes flashed. Do you know what it's like to have everyone expect you to win? There it was, the first little plea. Not apology. Explanation as a doorway to sympathy. In another life, I might have walked through. No, I said. I know what it's like to have everyone expect me to be grateful I'm allowed to compete. She looked away first, which felt better than it should have. Then she said, quieter. Mr. Calder said everyone gets help. He said your coach probably helped you too. Did he tell you to print it in the library? Her silence answered. Did he tell you to tell judges I stole it if I found it? Her jaw tightened. That was contingency. Contingency. Such a clean word for premeditated ruin. I stared at her until the hallway noise seemed to fade. In my first life, I almost said, you used that contingency and won. Instead, I said, you planned to destroy me if your cheating became visible. Her face hardened. Debate is about strategy. No, I said. Debate is about argument. Strategy is what people call cruelty when they want a trophy. She flinched, only slightly. Enough. Then her mother called her name from the far end of the corridor, and Sabrina's expression rearranged itself into injury. She walked away before I could say more, spine straight. Performance restored for the parent audience. I stood by the trophy case, shaking after the danger had passed. That is another thing nobody tells you about revenge. Your body does not wait for permission to react. It survives first and trembles later. The review widened because once one adult written script is found, every previous trophy starts casting a shadow. St. Aurelius tried to contain it as a private coaching misunderstanding. Mr. Calder claimed he had drafted practice material before the motion release, and Sabrina had accidentally printed the wrong document. That might have worked if the script did not include my name, my likely arguments, and red comments about handling ethics challenges. It might have worked if his laptop, requested by St. Aurelius under pressure from the regional committee, did not contain a folder named Final Motion Shortlist, received from an email address tied to a former adjudicator. It might have worked if Sabrina's messages to her teammates did not say, Calder has the real motion. Don't waste prep on the packet. Cheating, like mold, is rarely only on the visible wall. The tournament committee suspended St. Aurelius from the state finals, pending investigation. Mr. Calder lost access to multiple school coaching programs. The former adjudicator was removed from the regional circuit. Sabrina's Best Speaker awards from 2 tournaments were placed under review. None of that happened in the first life because I gave the script back and became the scandal instead. That knowledge did not make me feel powerful exactly. It made me furious at the thinness of reality. How many official truths are built on one girl panicking at the wrong minute? How many cheaters become champions because the honest person tries to be discreet? Coach Fallon apologized to me after practice the next week. Not for this life, where she had stood by me, but in a way that seemed to reach toward all the versions of me she would never know. I should have taught you all procedure before rhetoric, she said. Arguments matter, but evidence protects the speaker. I nodded. Can we teach that to the juniors? So we did. The next club meeting was not about openings or rebuttal drills. It was about timestamps, chain of custody, tournament rules, and the sentence, I need a witness before I touch this. Everyone groaned because teenagers think procedure is boring until it saves their name. I wrote that sentence on the board and underlined witness 3 times. Sabrina did not disappear. People like her rarely do. They return after carefully chosen absences, smaller only to those who know where to look. She came back to school 2 weeks later, no longer captain, no longer state-bound, but still elegant enough that half the corridor softened out of habit. Some students whispered that she had been pressured by her coach. Some said everyone used private coaching, and she was the unlucky one caught. Some said I had set her up by withholding the script. That last word followed me for a while. Withholding. As if evidence were a lost scarf and not a weapon aimed at my throat. One afternoon, I found a folded note in my locker. You're not better. You just got smarter.
No signature.
Maybe Sabrina. Maybe one of her loyalists. Maybe someone who hated the idea that intelligence could belong to a girl they preferred as a victim. I taped the note inside my debate notebook. It was accurate enough to be useful. I had not become morally pure in my second life. I had become less available. That difference matters. At the state finals, where Eastmere advanced after St. Aurelia's suspension, I spoke second instead of third and lost narrowly to a team from Northbridge whose cases were brilliant, messy, and unmistakably student-made. Their first speaker dropped half her cards and still beat us on principle framing. I was disappointed. I was also happy, in a way that confused me. Losing fairly felt like standing in clean rain. Afterward, the Northbridge speaker shook my hand and said, "Your rebuttal on institutional trust was sharp." I said, "Your model actually worked." We laughed.
No stolen scripts.
No secret coaches.
No traps.
Just arguments flawed and alive. I realized then that Sabrina had not only tried to steal a round from me. She had tried to steal the possibility of losing without shame. I wanted that back too. Months later, the regional committee asked me to speak at a debate ethics workshop. The invitation made me suspicious because institutions love turning harmed students into inspirational decorations. I agreed only after they let me choose the topic. Why procedure is not the enemy of trust. It sounded boring. The room was full anyway because Scandal has excellent attendance. I stood at a lectern in front of students, coaches, adjudicators, and a few parents pretending not to recognize themselves in the examples. My hands shook at first. Lecterns remembered me. Scripts remembered me. Then I looked at the first slide, which showed a blank printer tray, and began. Most students are taught that integrity means doing the right thing when nobody is watching. That is incomplete. Integrity also means making sure somebody is watching before the wrong person tells the story. Heads lifted. Good. I told them what to do if they found unauthorized material. Do not return it privately. Do not photograph and gossip. Do not discuss contents with your team. Call an official. Preserve location. Document time. Seal the material. Protect your own eligibility. I did not name Sabrina. I did not need to. During questions, a coach asked whether such suspicion might create a hostile culture. I smiled because adults always worry about hostility after quiet harm becomes documentable. A culture where evidence is preserved is only hostile to people relying on confusion, I said. Mrs. Banerjee, seated in the back, laughed once into her scarf. After the workshop, a Year 9 girl approached me with a notebook clutched to her chest. I used to think debate was about sounding like you're never scared, she said. But you sounded scared and still right. It was the best compliment I received that year. That's most of adulthood, I told her, because rebirth had apparently made me dramatic and middle-aged. The final time I saw Sabrina in a debate room was not during a tournament. It was at the end of year alumni exhibition, where seniors gave showcase speeches for parents who still wanted a trophy photo even after the season's scandals. Sabrina had been allowed to attend but not compete. She stood near the back, arms folded, listening as I argued in a playful demonstration round about whether schools should abolish academic prizes. The motion was silly on the surface and sharp underneath. I argued yes, not because achievement should vanish, but because prizes often measure proximity to resources and then call the result character. The audience laughed in the right places. I improvised 3 rebuttals. I forgot one statistic and admitted it. The round was imperfect and mine. Afterward, Sabrina waited near the exit. "You're better when you don't sound coached," she said. It was almost an insult. Almost not. I studied her face. The old hatred was still there, but something else had joined it. Exhaustion, maybe. Or envy of a freedom she had been trained to fear.
So are you? I said.
She looked startled. I did not say it to comfort her. I said it because it was true. Under all the polish, Sabrina had once had instincts. Quick ones. Sharp ones. Mr. Calder had not created her talent. He had embalmed it. She looked toward the empty stage. I don't know how to speak without hearing him correct me. That was the closest she ever came to confession. I could have offered forgiveness like a ribbon, something pretty and premature. I did not. Then start with a sentence he would hate, I said. She laughed despite herself, one short sound. Then she left. We did not become friends. Some stories do not require that insult to their own damage. But years later, I heard she studied law and refused private coaching for oral advocacy because she preferred the risk.
Good.
Risk is where the living voice is. I kept the sealed copy receipt from Mrs. Banerjee longer than I kept the trophy. The trophy tarnished on my bookshelf, then went into a storage box when my mother complained it collected dust. The receipt stayed folded in my wallet until the creases nearly erased the ink. Item found, library printer, 2:14 p.m., finder Iris Reyes, sealed before disclosure to team. It was not sentimental in the usual way. It was proof that a moment could be handled differently. That the same warm paper, same rain, same rival, same trap, did not have to end with my name ruined. Years later, when I became a public defender, people assumed debate had taught me how to argue. It had, but that was not its greatest gift. Debate taught me that truth without procedure can be outperformed by a confident lie. Law taught me the same thing with higher stakes. I trained interns the way Coach Fallon eventually trained juniors. Document first, speak second. Never let the person with the polished story control the first record. Once, a young intern found a mislabeled evidence packet on a courthouse copier and came running to me, pale and shaking, asking whether she should give it to the opposing counsel before anyone noticed. I asked, "Have you touched it?" She said, "Only the corner." I asked, "Have you documented where it was?" She shook her head. I handed her gloves, my phone, and a chain of custody form. Then we start there. She stared at me like I had turned panic into furniture. Maybe I had. Afterward, she asked how I knew to be so careful. I thought of Sabrina's script, warm from the printer. My first life hand returning it like a fool delivering her own sentence, my second life hand sliding it into a folder and walking to the convener. I learned, I said, that returning the weapon is not the same as taking the high road. On the anniversary of that regional final, I visited my old school for a debate club fundraiser. The library had been renovated. The printer was newer, quieter, less dramatic, but it still smelled faintly of toner when it warmed. I stood beside it after the workshop while students argued over pizza and speaker rankings in the next room. For a second, I could almost see both versions of myself layered in the glass, the girls sprinting after Sabrina with the script, and the girls standing still long enough to record the tray. I did not hate the first girl anymore. She had believed fairness was contagious. She had believed giving someone a chance to do the right thing would make them take it. There are worse things to be than naive, but there are safer things to become. Mrs. Banerjee, older now but still terrifying, found me there and said, "You always look at printers like they owe you money." I laughed. One owed me a future. She nodded as if that made perfect sense. Maybe to her, it did. Before I left, a junior debater asked me to sign her notebook. I wrote the sentence I wish someone had written in mine before everything. Your voice matters, but protect the record that lets people hear it. Outside, rain tapped the windows exactly as it had that day. I walked to my car with no trophy, no secret script, no need to prove anything to a girl who once borrowed brilliance from an adult and called it victory. My phone buzzed with a message from Coach Fallon. New juniors won their first round. One of them asked for a witness before moving an abandoned prep folder. You'd be proud. I smiled so hard my face hurt. That was the real ending. Not Sabrina's fall, not my cleared name, not the silver cup. The real ending was a younger girl refusing to touch a trap with bare hands. In this life, I rejoined debate club. In this life, I found the secret script. In this life, I never gave it back to the girl who planned to use it and blame me for noticing. I let the evidence speak before I did. And for once, the room listened.